for investors, if you do not understand an investment, use an expert or just stay away from it. Because if you do not know where the return is coming from, most likely you're the return. So this helps you avoid conmanship and losing money without understanding how you lost money.
What significance does geopolitics play in your analysis?
It depends on what area I'm looking at. For example, if I'm looking at commodities and I'm looking at crude oil, geopolitics would have a very high significance in my analysis and in my outlook.
How is the investment landscape in Kenya right now?
Hello. Yet again with another episode of Bullish Banter. I hope you enjoyed the last one, covering a bit of financial market and, of course, our special guest from Uganda. I'm your host once again, Jesse, joined by a special guest today. And this one should be very interesting, to say the least. I'll first of all introduce Rufus. How are you faring on?
Well, I'm doing well.
Yes.
I'm so jacked up for this episode.
Good. You know, the last time we had a chat, there was so much winning. How are you faring?
Well,
Keep points for contest for listeners and viewers. We are recording this on the 21st of August, and I think for the last 2 days, Nasdaq has been dropping. So I'm here to just mention so much winning. Yeah.
well, I think we are tired of winning for the last 2 weeks.
Yes. The reds are beautiful on the chart, right?
Well,
Yeah. Now, so we'll be covering a bit of global. Today we'll be back home, a bit of data from Kenya, and I'm joined by a special guest. I'll let her introduce yourself, maybe what you do.
Thank you very much, both of you, Jesse and Rufus. My name is Stella Swakei. I'm an investments and economics analyst, currently working for Standard Investment Bank. Yeah, largely or popularly known for the good fund, wonderful fund in town, Mansa X. Yeah.
Okay, very nice. I think that makes for a very good introduction. What makes you become an economist or an analyst, investment analyst?
Well,
What should somebody do for them to? Well,
okay, so first you should be interested in financial matters. And in terms of for example, let me start from the basics, the bachelor's or the degree you do in university. I do not think it really matters because we have analysts who are engineers. There's an interesting friend of mine who did aeronautical engineering and he's a very good analyst right now. Yeah, myself, I did actuarial science. So maybe you'd have expected to find me in risk and insurance and all of that, but I'm an analyst. So basically it's, first of all, the interest. Number two, a lot of learning. And for you to be qualified, again, you need professional qualifications in terms of the papers that you do. Either locally, you can have the certified investment and financial analyst, that is CIFA. You can also do CFA, Chartered Financial Analyst. For that one is recognizable even globally. So that one is a good one, actually. Another one, you should be able to work in an environment that does these things. So investment banks, fund managers, because then you'll be able to interact a lot with investment staff, economic staff, because most of them determine how investments perform. So yeah.
okay, interesting. I think that answers, it responds rather to an interesting debate I've seen recently online.
you know, there's a fun fact.
Yeah.
I don't think the government has hired an economist since what? I don't know if it's 2015. Yeah. And the universities are still producing economists per year.
Okay. I mean, we are here, Rufus.
But anyway, even if they were to hire today, they wouldn't hire the young ones. We all know they'd go for...
Yeah.
Yeah.
These ones who have been out in the streets a bit, hardened life.
Well, these are a glimpse of hope, especially for actuarial science students.
Yeah.
You know, like there's like 100 graduates by insurance or bank.
Yeah.
And you find that most of these institutions will be hiring one actuary and the rest are left in the streets.
So it means you have to be, I would say, adaptive and dynamic.
Yeah, and you see, even for actuarial science, for you to actually be called an actuary, you need to do the professional papers.
Yeah.
As I stand myself, if I didn't veer off my path, I wouldn't be called an actuary. I'm just an actuarial science graduate because I don't have the paper. So it's another expense, and they're not cheap. So you do the papers for you to be called an actuary, and they hire people with, let's say, 1, 2, or 3 papers, not just actuarial science.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice. First things off, given where you work, it means you are interacting a lot with the local investment scene. And I think we have done a brief coverage or analysis in local stock market, but we on Bullish Banter, we major a lot on international with a bit of Kenya. This year we have seen a bullish momentum, and every television show is showing, NSE up 2%, close the week 5%. I think this is the record number of volumes half year to date. New listings. What else is there? Plans to privatize and or deprive or government delimit itself from, is it Kenya Pipeline?
Yes.
Not Kenya Pipeline.
Expand pipeline,
Yeah. And things like that. How is the investment landscape in Kenya right now?
Things have evolved.
Yeah.
And good thing with investments is that what we was last year, not what we are today.
Even yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. So last year, a lot of fuss was with fixed income investments, bonds, T-bills and all.
Yeah.
But right now, as you rightly mentioned, we are so much into equities.
Yeah.
So number one reason would be the issue of interest rates, because people go where there are returns. And sometimes demand will push returns up, especially in the stocks market, because when people want more, then prices go up.
Yeah.
So from this shift from bonds or the fixed income market to now the equities market, we have seen a lot of movement and excitement in the stock market. And that's how we get to see very good numbers, double digits. And we also seeing, and maybe it's circumstances, because when you look at the past, like 5 years, since 2020, a lot has been happening geopolitically, in the economic landscape. So when you look at all these factors, maybe the right time is now, the circumstances now have allowed some of these things we are seeing, like listings, the government wanting to let go of some of its stake in the parastatals. So circumstances may be favorable for the things we are seeing, the listing of other ETFs like Satrix. So I think the investment landscape right now is quite evolving and exciting, and there are opportunities. There may not be so many, but there are opportunities to make money for investors.
Interesting. You remember when I said so much winning, eh?
Yeah.
Now, I want to bring something. You said circumstances perhaps has driven a lot of interest in the local markets. I just mentioned yesterday and today, for context, this is 21st of August. Nasdaq has been falling. And this is because Trump has mentioned that companies which are involved with chip should seek licenses from him or his administration. And then they will have to expect, is it 15% of the revenue, right? Yeah. While opposite is happening in Kenya. Is it an emerging market, at least in your vocabulary? Or yeah. And in Kenya, an emerging market, the government is basically delimiting itself from stocks. Would you say, given the uncertainty due to tariffs abroad, is causing a lot of, despite, of course, local Kenyans investing, are you experiencing interests from foreign players coming back into Kenya?
Not necessarily. I'd say it's a balance of both, because you're seeing outflows really for the blue chips, the most liquid companies that have visibility by foreigners. Yeah. There's outflows for KCB, there are outflows for Safaricom. Yeah. But you see mostly with foreign investors, for them they have a target. And when they get to that, they want to exit. So when they find a favorable exit point, then they will exit. Yeah. So remember, for example, for Safaricom, and I'll use Safaricom as an example because it's the most liquid.
Yeah.
and commands a larger market share in our BAUs, it had gone low. The price had declined quite a bit. We saw even levels of 14 shillings thereabout, 11.
Yeah.
So
But he was really bashing on it. It was an interesting time a year or two ago, but here we are.
exactly. So you see, for someone who wanted to exit then,
Yeah.
that would have been a good wash, let me say that.
Yes.
But then now we are seeing the price appreciating. So someone who was really waiting to exit will definitely exit at this point. And we have seen a very good YTD performance, approximately 58%.
Yeah.
So that would be a good price for someone to exit. So that's why maybe you'd see some outflows going out. So I wouldn't say that it's entirely outflows as much as we have a balance of net outflows and net inflows in the market on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But I'd say it's a balance of both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but tend to think Safaricom serves more like a benchmark index for Kenya individually.
Uh-huh.
It's one company that spans the whole economy,
Yeah.
and it's kind of an indicator of how the economy is doing. If Safaricom is doing well, there's a likelihood that the rest of the country is doing well.
Yeah.
So it's like the S&P 500.
Yeah.
So I know about last year. I don't know the returns you had in 2024, but I'm more interested. How did you survive 2023?
Yes.
Again,
Yeah.
the good thing with equities is that we always put a disclaimer that this is a long-term investment. So if you do yours short-term, you won't blame the fundamentals or the concept of equities. But if you can wait, then it's good for you, because the good thing again with markets, they go down, but they will go up. They go up, they will come down. It's a cycle.
Okay.
Yeah,
So it was just a matter of holding on to
exactly.
and praying for the best.
But then,
Hope and pray strategy.
exactly, I am also worried for people who bought Safaricom at 45,
Okay.
because there are people who did that.
Look.
Don't think so.
That is winning. It's also winning.
I'm worried for those ones, because I can imagine where they are right now, because even when we have people saying it's at a 3-year high, you're still making losses.
Yeah.
There's no way you can convince this person that life is good in the stocks market. But then there are very many strategies that people can use, even those that say bought at 45 shillings, because you could average your price by buying more at a lower price. So that could actually balance out your portfolio.
Interesting that you mentioned those who bought at 45. I
Yeah.
think is it Charlie Mungo or Warren Buffett, whereby if you are not prepared to see the value of your portfolio drop by half, then don't even bother buying it, right?
Exactly.
Even though it went up to 80%. So there is that. In your organization, what is the philosophy in terms of investing? I know you have said long term, but if you don't mind sharing them, and what would you be advising for anybody, from our side, with trading, you can make quick returns,
Yeah.
and you might want to pack it somewhere whereby it can grow at a pace you're comfortable with. What is it, a philosophy that you think enabled you to survive 2023? And right now, when you're seeing the fruits of it all, they can be able to apply on themselves.
For us, we are more on short and long call.
Yeah.
So, or sterling.
Yeah.
So even with declines and steep ones, for that matter, you could actually make a kill out of these investments.
Yeah.
So I'd say that was one of the good strategies or best strategies that made us survive that. But then on a personal or individual capacity, I don't look at it from that point of long-term or anything. Like, there are ways you could make money, just that you have to understand how these things work. Because there's someone who invested, let's say, in which company can I use? Let me use I&M.
Yes.
Because I don't think 1 year, 1.5 years is long term. That is short, maybe medium, but I'd say short. So let's say I bought I&M in 2024 at the beginning. So I think it was at 20. I bought it in the middle of 2024, and it was at 20 something.
27, 28.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I look at my portfolio, and it's even something in the lines of 50 something, 77% up.
Yeah.
And I have not waited for so long. So if I want to exit my position, I will make good money still.
Yeah.
Even with the concept or the fundamental of equities are long term.
Okay.
So for me, it depends on the entry point a lot, where you buy your stock at. For example, you're just choosing the stock market, and how or at what point, because you might buy when they've already announced the dividend, and you're rushing as every other investor for you to lock in the dividend. So at that point, you getting a capital depreciation would be very easy after the dividend, considering that you're buying it at a peak. Let me use also the example of BAT right now. After they announced their dividend, we saw a surge in the price. We are at, I think, 440 something right now.
Yes.
So someone who buys at that, and then we have the dividend paid and it goes back down, you see, you won't blame us. You won't blame me for advising you.
When do we think buy?
Exactly. And you should understand.
Individual responsibility.
Exactly. You should understand that there are cycles with investments. There's that model that is called head-shoulder model.
Yes.
There are people who buy at the head, which is at the peak, and then it starts to go down. So you'll make losses, definitely. So you need to understand your entry point, and that will help you make money or lose money.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. He mentioned Safaricom is the yardstick of Kenyan stock market and technically the economy. We have seen CBK cut rates multiple times. We have seen the debate on Kenyan commercial bank, or either to go CPR or whichever way
Interbank, yeah.
to increase credit allocation. We have seen debates of maybe we should merge these two largest banks, of which I'm strongly against. I think we should have more banks. Yeah, we need at least another like 50 of them.
Yeah.
What is your assessment of the credit scene in Kenya, at least from your investment point of view? And obviously, does that dictate maybe how the stock market is performing now? And, MMFs are doing badly because of bonds. So what is their overview on that market?
Yeah, it sure does. Another thing with the economy and even the performance of investments is that they're usually intertwined. So even how the currency performs will have an effect on inflows or outflows at the bows. So with credit and interest rates, this has been a significant conversation, as you've said. And yes, it determines, because the less attractive government securities or the fixed income market is, the more attractive the equities market become.
Okay.
And the general relationship tends to be more of inverse. When the fixed income market is performing well, largely the bonds, you find that the equities market is not performing well because the focus is more on the fixed income side.
Yes.
So in terms of credit, I feel like, in my view, and this is from an economic perspective, the pull and push is from both sides, the creditors and the lenders.
Okay.
I'm right there, right? Creditors and lenders, the ones who borrow, and the borrowers and the lenders.
Yes.
Yeah. So for the lenders, they are more cautious because the business environment has never really recovered since 2022.
Okay.
So they are cautious of what we call non-performing loans or people defaulting. Yeah. On the other hand, these businesses or the people who are borrowing are also cautious because their margins have narrowed.
Yes.
So then they're afraid of borrowing these loans, which are at elevated rates, while margins are narrower. So it means that if I want to repay a loan, then my margins will be even more narrow. So for that matter, it becomes a very tough balance on how credit grows in our country. And that's why you'd see our credit growth numbers struggling a lot. But then now that we have the currency stable, so we are moving from kind of same level. We have been seeing some subdued growth, but at least it's some improvement. But generally, just to answer your question in a nutshell, yes, the credit environment, which is determined by the central bank rate, because it also determines the rates on treasury bills and treasury bonds, which again were cited by banks as one of the items that they use to price their loans in the current framework. It also determines how money moves into the stock market, or whether money moves into money market funds, which you mentioned, because they invest mostly in fixed income securities, and that determines the play in the investment market generally.
Interesting. That kind of relationship, I think, has really helped, especially equity investors in Kenya, with what we got like 7 rate cuts consecutively, from 13.5 to 9.5. Yeah, like that's literally a 4% drop. But I think the bond yields dropped further. Like the people are getting 18%, and today was the average 8%. So down 10% on the yields. It's enough to frustrate a bond investor into going into stocks.
Exactly.
I normally think it's, I wonder why Kenya uses 50 basis point cut.
Big steps.
Like, because if you've been following the bond yields, they dropped from 18 to 16 to 14. They were dropping by at least 2 basis points. It was not like, 200 basis points. They were not doing like 0.5%. And then when CBK does, the Monetary Policy Committee does their job, they are doing it like their FOMC. FOMC 50 basis points is a significant cut.
Yeah.
But for Kenya to drop 1%, even if you go with the risk-based rating, they will do it maybe 0.5%. So you are being charged 26.5. You are just being charged 26. It has no significant relief to you. Yeah. Now, FX rate in Kenya is at 130, stayed like that for the better part of...
since August last year.
Excellent.
I think it's...
What is your assessment on that? Because I know a lot of Kenyans have been wondering why it is at that. From your analysis, research, deep dive, deep search, AI, ChatGPT, what is causing that stability?
I would say, let me not say demand and supply, but
it's a bit.
Yeah, it has been a bit stable. But remember, we started the journey from when we bought back the Eurobond.
Yeah.
And we had a very significant or steep U-turn. So with that came a lot of initiatives and frameworks by the Central Bank of Kenya, and one of which I attribute a lot to where we are seeing the currency today is the one that they changed the reporting mechanism, where now we have to weight the amounts of money that players buy based on the rate that they bought. So we all know that when you do huge amounts, then the rate is usually softened or eased.
Yeah.
So if you're buying, let's say, $1 million and I'm buying 10,000, you might buy at 129, I might buy at 130.
Mm-hmm.
So if this is weighted, generally or technically, the rate will remain at 129.
Yeah.
So how that applies then, remember the central bank says that they will intervene if need be, but then there is no specific guidelines of when is need be.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then when you look at the forex reserves, you see a lot of movement up and down. So the general assumption is there is some buying and selling of US dollars. So remember, this is a big buyer. If central bank is buying, then this is a big buyer. So definitely the buying amount or the rate at which they will buy will remain or will weight this rate to that particular rate. So generally, if they wanted to maintain that rate at 129, what I'm saying is they would be able to maintain it.
Okay.
Yes, so that change on the reporting weighting of the rate is what I attribute most to how the currency has performed. Because when you look at the supply and demand, we are not better off than the other years. And looking at the direction at which the USD case pair was coming, we would have expected it even to go to 100 or 90 something, given the direction and the speed at which it had come from 160. So I believe that that's the major reason, the waiting bit, because larger amounts determine where that rate will remain.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's a very good jump. Now I can go to what I wanted to ask. This year we have seen dollar index basically depreciating, and in your fund, I'm sure you are you following the tariff talk, or you're like other sovereign funds which have been hold, wait and see?
Or even better, do you have like offshore allocations?
We do a lot of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice. So today I think I'm catching you guys surprised here, flat-footed. Walmart CEO was saying that they are seeing tariff impacts on prices escalating week by week. And therefore, Trump fired the other guy due to very poor NFP numbers. I'm sure when the CPI numbers come about, he will be mad again.
Yeah.
From your funds allocation, how are you approaching this market? I know some funds have been uncertain. Others have been like, we will see by Q4, Q3. What is your approach to this situation whereby Trump always chickens out, but he comes back with something crazy next time?
Yeah. I will speak from a general point of view.
Yes.
We are heavy on hedging.
Okay.
Using derivatives, and also we do indices. And when you look at the equities market, I think even globally right now, the equities market is doing very well. You look at an S&P, Nikkei, Nasdaq, all of those, they are upside in terms of YTD performance. So we have done a lot of that, ETFs and derivatives. But then when you look at it, the larger portion of our funds are in fixed income. So Eurobonds and all of those.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect of, yes, there's diversification, but hedging and hedging against risks is much of what we do. And then remember I mentioned the strategy on short selling and long selling.
Yeah.
So those are the major strategies that we employ.
Gold is up around 20%
Yes.
the year started.
Mm-hmm.
So in the spirit of our good old friend Mansa Musa, are you guys like allocating to like safe haven assets or risky assets, especially US tech?
We have some allocations in tech, but gold is also part of our allocations.
Okay.
Yeah, the percentage might have changed since the last quarter because we do quarterly reviews. So basically, we have something in most of this, and gold is also one of them.
Maybe, okay, sorry.
So yeah.
Maybe you can mention where people can find your fact sheet so that they can review it.
Oh yeah, on our website, that is Standard Investment Bank, you would get to see the fact sheets for our Manta X Kenya fund, Kenya Shillings Fund, US dollar, and also the Sharia compliant one.
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. Staying with that, you mentioned Eurobond. Euro as a currency has really gained this year. And from your analysis, are you seeing, I think there's been a bit of a debate whereby Euro is becoming a safe haven as compared to Japanese yen, given the volatility of the yen and BOJ uncertainty. Is that the case even in your I would say, allocation strategy and whatnot? And are you seeing Europe as ideally a good investment avenue to park your fund, given what is happening in US and their politics?
Definitely. Investments love certainty.
Yeah.
So when you have a lot of movements and a lot of unpredictability, then you you tend to shy away or to shift away from that side.
Yep.
So you also carry, I'd also carry the same, I would agree with you and everyone else in terms of where we find certainty and stability and also appreciation. That's where we tend to move along. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. China. Is it an investable Because I think, was it last year when we were talking about Chinese stock market being up significantly, especially after the Evergrande saga now finally died? Is it an avenue whereby you find it investable, or it's investable but uncertain?
Yes, I'd go with that. Investable but uncertain.
Yeah.
But then remember, uncertainty really or coincides with risk.
Yes.
So there are people who are risk lovers. So if your risk appetite is high and you will not lose sleep at night wondering, how is my $1 million doing? Will I die tomorrow of heart attack? Then you can invest in this market. So yeah, for me, the catch is, how is your risk appetite?
Okay.
Yes.
Very nice. Now, given what's happening globally, there's been talk of Eastern European war, which has been going on for 3 years. Of course, the Middle East crisis, Gaza and everything. There are negotiations going on right now. What significance does geopolitics play in your analysis, especially when you're looking at long-term investing and short-term investing?
Yeah, it depends on what area I'm looking at. Because, for example, if I'm looking at commodities and I'm looking at crude oil, then I'd be very, geopolitics would match or would have a very high significance in my analysis and in my outlook. Because if the geopolitical tensions will affect supply and demand for oil, for example, then I have to incorporate that into my outlook for example, crude.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at currencies and, for example, right now people are running towards gold as a safer haven, then I will also have to look at how geopolitics will come in and affect gold prices and all of this.
Yeah.
Let me bring in another aspect, for example, of weather.
Yeah.
If I do things like wheat, coffee, all of these, then I will also need to incorporate the weather forecasts and outlook into my analysis to be able to know where am I allocating more of my funds to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice. Interesting that you mentioned safe haven gold. Bitcoin has been one of those topics which are not touched by funds, especially the big funds. But right now, I'm sure the BlackRocks, the big funds that are doing significant allocations to it.
Well, I don't think they have entirely been avoiding Bitcoin. It's more like if you operate in a jurisdiction where, let's say, you don't have a way of, let's say, buying Bitcoin directly, a lot of funds have been going through Bitcoin spot ETFs. So the real question is, have you been like getting some exposure to Bitcoin?
Not necessarily.
Personally, of course.
Okay. Is that based on maybe regulations in Kenya or as a philosophy in terms of investing?
Not necessarily. For me, the challenges that I have get to hear a lot is the bit on jurisdiction, because it's what affects regulation.
Yeah.
So we have had a tough let me just say a tough run with unregulated funds or unregulated investments.
Yes.
So I would think that that's one of the reasons that people may be averse to such an asset class. But then number two, I don't know, you guys are the ones who do these things, but we want to get a lot of information about it, like awareness and letting people know actually this is how they work. The same way we advise people and tell people fixed income investments are this way, equities investments are this way, you have to be worried about the entry point as opposed to the longevity or something like that. Then we also need to hear more about it for us to be aware. And maybe, I think regulations are coming up in different or various jurisdictions on that particular asset.
Yeah.
So maybe that would ramp up or increase.
Yeah, I think there's a virtual assets bill, the house or something like that. For those who did not listen to the 2 episodes or 3 episodes ago, we talked about Bitcoin in depth. So go and check that out.
Yeah. So my point was that there's nothing wrong in getting into a different market. Even though there's jurisdiction issues, we find there's always a fast mover.
Yeah.
For instance, I believe the very first company to get forex trading, forex brokerage license was FX Pesa. That was 6 years ago. But then there are Kenyan traders who have been trading like 10 years before. Yeah.
So there will always be that test subject, and then
You're right. You're right.
excellent. You see, in Kenya right now, I think I don't want to say economic turmoil, but that is the case. There is a bit of little cash in circulation, and therefore people are willing to take a bit of risk. People are also willing to find a ways to protect their hard-earned money. Yes. Recently, NSE started one stock trading. First of all, what is your view on that? Is it a welcome move, or you find it will just cause a lot of volatility in the markets?
It's a welcome move, and it will cause a lot of volatility in the market.
Well, we both like volatility. It's the bread and butter.
For us traders, without volatility, there is no business.
And then I'll go back to the second, or rather, go on to the next point. New York Stock Exchange is basically doing fractional shares because of the price, and obviously they trading on a day-to-day. Do you foresee, given that this one-day stock trading, I think some time back they wanted to reduce the settlement date for our stock to into 1 day, and you have mentioned it's a welcome move. Perhaps if you interact with new young traders and curious minds, what would be something you would advise them as they get into this? Because some people are not very patient for 1 year, like you said.
Yeah.
And, tomorrow you see Bitcoin is up 100%. What would be something that you would advise to such people?
Well, I like to say that investments are personal.
Yeah.
One, I'm the one who knows what I want in terms of the return.
Yeah.
I'm the one who knows what use I have for this money. So, for example, if I have money and I want to learn firsthand how investments work, then I can do it. If I don't have to lose sleep because of this money, it's okay. So, in terms of this move or this initiative that has come, it's a good one again because the disposable income for Kenyans has significantly gone down. So I might have 1,000 shillings and I want maybe to buy BAT. I can only get 2 or 3 shares. Without that, I'd have required something in the lines of 40,000 for me to be able to buy the minimum prior what we had previously.
Yeah.
So from an investor point of view, it's a good and a welcome move. But from a fund manager's, for example, point of view, who has to report results quarterly, then it might be challenging because for them, volatility is not something they love like you guys.
Well, I think the step to allow people to buy just one share is something that was long overdue. But then it's not just that, it has to be at least some form of systemic integration into society because it risks this dodging behavior. You know, like what has been happening with Robinhood, Wall Street Bets in 2021.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love
so,
it.
You look at our population here in Kenya.
Yeah.
If you look at gambling revenues, they have been way up there.
Yes.
If you are saying the economy doesn't have money, nothing is happening. These guys are raking in billions from the economy. So if you introduce that one share trading to Kenyans without proper education into like what these underlying assets are, what influences them and everything, then you might see gambling behavior being transitioned into NSE stocks.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're right.
I tend to think those ones weed themselves out after some time, like the way Uchumi can go to 1 shilling and then you realize you're wasting your time.
Well, have you seen the statistics in gambling? It just keep on going, like just keeps on rolling.
Yeah.
Okay. It's an if sort of situation because it has been 1 week with the 1 day trading. But again, I would say the technology in buying shares is not really similar to trading
to betting.
Robinhood.
Okay.
Well,
and opening a CBSC account, connecting it to a broker, waiting for the settlement date and everything. I think those countermeasures or internal controls sort of discourage the gambling behavior.
But
I would say.
From what I'm seeing with the current CEO of the NSE, he is more like trying to eliminate traditional barriers to entry. And one step was reducing the minimum shares. So tech-wise, I think he's moving towards a direction where you'll just download an app and basically deposit money, buy stocks directly.
Okay.
And of course, various financial institutions will be looking to do that.
Okay. You escaped one question which I asked.
Which one?
We have seen talks of, with KCB giving record numbers in revenue, half-year performance, Equity doing the same, talks of merging them to become a one super mega bank in Africa. Is that something, as an economist, what is your view on it?
Okay. I think whoever proposed.
Yeah.
Anyway, let me not. But my view is that no, that's not. It's not something I'd recommend. Majorly because, number one, these two businesses have different clientele and their type of business, so they serve different customers. Merging them then means giving up on one or fragmenting. So where again is the need for merging? Number two, as you said, we need more banks.
Yeah, that's my view.
Yes.
Yeah, we need 100 more.
I wouldn't say 100, but
I started with 50.
yeah.
I was being conservative. I mean, if we have 47 counties, I see no reason why we should not have 100 banks.
In each county?
Yes, actually,
Like
one
two-
in each
two-
ward.
Okay.
Yeah, one in each ward. I think if you look at, there's a statistics I shared yesterday.
Yeah.
America has 300 million people. Germany has around 83 million people. Banks serving, I would say, is it 1 million clients? It's around 16:1.
Okay.
So you have 16 banks to choose from. They have around one something banks, which are insured, the community banks. And therefore, access to credit to do your own business is easily accessible. You have the right to fail in your business. The banks obviously have countermeasures to that. But that innovation is what spurs growth. That is my view.
You're right in terms of competition.
Yeah.
Because the lesser you have, the less competition. So the less crude behaviors and crude operations, because then you have high rates and you have nowhere to run to.
Yeah.
So I think it's good for competition to have more alternatives, a variety of different products from different banks. That would be good for the economy as opposed to having single players, because again it encourages kind of monopoly of operations. Yeah.
Very nice. Now, to the best business loved by all Kenyans, real estate.
Okay.
And the land.
Yeah.
How is that side of business going on right now with the high interest rate environment? I think some time back there was this rule by, I think it was something in the bill. I'm not quite sure about that. Perhaps our audience might chip in on that, whereby people were renting out B&Bs and stuff like that, building houses for leasing. Is there a genuine demand for housing in Kenya? Is that a growing business that people are looking into, especially now that you have said equities are the hot cake in the market?
Yeah. So, you have affordable housing. So
Yes, exactly. And then there is
my number is
As a state player.
houses are many, but
yes,
the contradiction or the irony has been, you'd expect, for example, the construction sector to excel in such an environment. But when you look at the GDP numbers, the construction sector continues to struggle.
Yeah.
So there's some bit of irony, and maybe could be explained by a couple of factors.
Yeah.
But real estate in general, looking at the demand side and also the supply side, for some time we had seen more of supply, and especially in the what do we call it? It's not office sector, but something in the lines, the commercial sector.
Okay.
Yeah, a bit of more of supply than is demand.
Okay.
And when you look at capital accessibility right now for businesses and for entrepreneurs, then it becomes a bit of a challenge to even take up spaces.
Okay.
So that said, I wouldn't discourage real estate. and even land. But the problem and the major challenge of real estate is liquidity. I have had 2 people in the last month who really needed cash, and they kept telling me, I wish we listened to you. Tungeweka pesa sijui wapi, because you told us. Now I've been wanting to sell my land for the last 3 months. I have not found someone. So that is the major challenge with real estate, and specifically land. And even if you're talking of buildings and all of these, it's also a challenge to find someone who wants to buy an apartment or even a whole building, even though that could be less and less of an occurrence. But then we have also seen good initiatives under the NSC, for example, with rates.
Yeah.
But we saw not a downgrade. The rates, the Fahari, was it Thailand, moving from the quoted securities to the unquoted market. So it's still available for investment for people who are willing and interested in the real estate market, just that you're not buying a whole apartment. It has been broken down so that you can afford it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's viable, but you need to be prepared that liquidity.
Yeah.
An issue,
But again, it's also good for hedging against indicators like inflation, and even when you have economic turmoil, as we were taught.
Okay.
Yeah.
Finally, economists they are the poorest forecasters of anything. I mean, you have seen how many times have a global, another GFC been predicted since 2008, yeah? Now I'll challenge you. Given you are some of our traders this year have been following a bit of gold. I know you are not a trader per se. And whatever is happening globally, what is your price target on XAUUSD? Or rather, based on everything that you have analyzed, do you foresee it? Which is your high line price by end of year? Let me put it that way.
I don't have a price. Don't tell me. No, I will not give a price.
Yes.
But I would expect the trend to remain as is.
So ranging, because it has been just doing 3,400.
Yes. So same area. Same area. I will not give up, so that you don't hold my...
No, nobody will hold you onto account. It's not an investment advice.
But I'd expect the same range.
Okay.
Same, yeah.
Okay. Second question. I think I have here NSC shares is up 35%, NSC 35%. This is a very good year in Nairobi Securities Exchange. I think these are numbers.
Safaricom is up, boss. Benchmark is up.
It's up 58%.
Like if Safaricom is up, like appetite is good.
Definitely.
Everything else is...
Given that you are insisting on Safaricom, I will ask the question. There have been concerns about the expansion to Ethiopia.
Yeah.
As you analyze their books and everything, is that a concern from what you are seeing?
In the last release,
Yes.
we had actually seen some improvement.
Okay.
So we expect that to continue. And we had said that a lot. We told investors, give it time, and in 4 years, you'll start seeing some form of return with that. Okay. So when we start seeing profits increasing in the Ethiopian business, then it means we will also see appreciation in the price, because this, again, remember the stocks market is largely dependent on sentiment and signaling. Yeah, okay. So we don't expect to see a turnaround in terms of declining, but the trend that has been there in terms of gaining and improvement in the business there, we expect to see the price to continue going up. So the problem, again, let me focus on problems today, but either way, the challenge...
The sigh you had this silently being was, 45.
So I worry for them. But the challenge mostly with our market, I think it's the matching of fundamentals and the price that we see. Well, I can just say that our market is not as efficient, or ours is a weak form, but the fundamentals don't match the price. When you look at the book value, for example, for Safaricom, you'd see predictions and forecasts of even 33 shillings, others will say 34, others 38. But when you look at the price, because I remember we were saying 30 something when Safaricom was at 14. So you look at the mismatch and you understand that, is it investors who don't understand the fundamentals, or where is the mismatch?
Hope and pray.
Analyst estimates.
See, economists.
So I think even if there is a mismatch from what we see as the expectation versus the real price, on the positive side, there has been more of a positive optimism based on the results of last year.
Yes.
So anyone who was like really staying off, they are like, no, I'm not doing anything in SE.
Yeah.
We just park my money in bonds. I'm good with 18%. Now, if you see the new offerings coming in at 10%,
Yeah.
you're like, hey, let me consider these stocks.
Yes.
Okay. Very nice. Now, now that we are done with before we get done with the market, so you mentioned rather something about sentiments and fundamentals. Yeah. For those who are looking to consider that option of local investments, and if you're coming from trading, you have your data all the way back to whatever period. You can easily get Tesla since the listing date to date. Yeah. How would you suppose somebody would get their technical analysis in the local buzz? Because I know that's a big challenge. You have to buy data and everything.
Definitely, you have to buy data.
Yeah.
But the good thing is, when you want to invest, you need a broker.
Yeah.
So brokers keep the data.
Okay.
They will always advise you. And if you're my client and you call me, tell me what is the technical analysis on this particular share, say Safaricom, then I'll be able to advise you.
Okay.
So you will not have bought the data, but you'll have, even to a higher extent, gotten expert advice on that particular.
Well, the point Jesse is trying to say is that from our side, or from the guys who are mostly used to trading forex, global stocks, indices.
Yeah.
If I'm trading SP 500, I have price action history for the last 20 years.
Yes.
I don't want advice. I want to
do it on my own. Do my own strategy. Draw my own lines.
And decide how much I'm risking on this without consulting anyone.
So how do you approach that?
Yeah, something like that.
That's it. Like, that's a big part.
Okay.
I want to now get into Kenya assets.
Because I know your time will not be free, and I may not be willing, per se.
I hear you. Yeah. So I will use the model I said, or I mentioned, of the head-shoulder model.
Yes.
So when you're looking at your data, say for the last 20 years, you'll definitely get the highs, the lows, and the average of this price.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, you will not want to buy this stock or this pair when it's at the highest or at the peak, like you did with you will not want to buy something when it's at its peak.
Are you bearish? Are you bearish bantering me?
Not just what Bitcoin.
Yes. Because it will come.
Financial advice.
Yeah, not financial advice, not speaking against any company. But you will not want to buy something when it's at its peak. And as we said, markets will always come down. Markets will always go up depending on the economic and the whatever environment that you're operating in. Yeah. So I'd want to buy at, say, worst case, at the average. Yeah. Because at the average, I have hope, or I would expect this price to go up because there's a peak. Okay. But me buying at peak, then there has to be a very price shifting phenomenon for this price to go above the peak that it has been for the last 20 years. Okay. Yeah, for example, and I'm not marketing or promoting anything or speaking against anything, it's just an example. Stanchart, the stock was at 340 something the other day.
Yeah.
It's a record high. Yeah. Why would I want to buy it at 340? Yet, this is a stock that was at 140 at some point. So, it's double. Why would I put my money in hoping that it will move from 340 to something else. And then when we have results now and we have a decline in profits, the price starts going down. And it's same case for someone who bought Safaricom at 45. Now on air because
it's funny. I'm noticing like key differences between like Kenyan investing, Kenyan macro, and the global investing.
Because 340 better.
Let me explain. The Kenya shilling has remained hot at around 109.5 for the last 1 year. So Kenyans are used to so much volatility in FX rates that when they are stable, people are wondering what's wrong. So the same thing with NSE, but a bit different. Kenyans are used to like bad performance in NSE equities, but when a stock is up 100%, they are like, no, I'm not buying anymore there. Let's get out.
Exactly.
So, you look at global investing. For instance, my personal favorite is Bitcoin. In January, it was at a new all-time high, 109K.
Yeah.
We were still buying. Gets to 120, still buying. We got to what? Was it 124,000 the other day?
Yeah.
And still buying. And people are not afraid of the dips. You look at NVIDIA, the last 3 years, we have had triple-digit gains per year. You get 150%, you get 200%. This year, we are still up, and nobody is afraid about the downside. Of course, there is risk management tools. You don't have to hold into a big dip.
Yeah.
But the confidence just keeps on increasing the more a stock performs well.
Yeah.
So it feels like on the NSE, your stock performs really well. The confidence now starts going back down.
Like itaanguka.
No, maybe it's a bias, but then you see all these things that usually happen. Let me be theoretical a bit.
Yeah.
They can actually be explained by theories.
Yeah.
For example, there are theories that explain behaviors, and we are told that investors are more of behavioral than rational.
Definitely.
So you see, when a stock is performing well and people keep buying, the price will continue to go up. Same way you've explained it. You started from this, you go, it's up, you still buy, it goes up, you still buy.
Yeah.
But then in an environment where sentiment is, this is the peak, it looks like the peak. And then with banks, because they release frequently, there's a lot of signaling. So if I expect bad results, then definitely this stock price will fall, definitely.
Yeah.
So it's not entirely on because it's high, I think it will fall.
Yeah.
It's some of the downside risks that we see and looking at where we've been coming from, because as for banks, we have been from a high base.
Okay.
So you'd expect some form of leveling up or a decline.
Okay.
So it's based on a round of effects, but it doesn't mean necessarily that when it's up, it won't go further up. It's just...
I'm speaking for the 45.
It's more like past performance. So suggesting continued future performance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Maybe as we wrap it up, what are some of the books you are reading?
I'm more of the macroeconomic side or economic side.
Yeah.
So I love to read things like, right now the current read I'm doing is on privatization, but what I'm done with was on austerity.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe...
and also the one for leisure. I was reading one by Jackson Biko. Let me call you back. Yeah.
Okay. Jackson Biko. What would be your parting shot for the bullish banter community? Investors and traders. What would be a word of advice, parting shot, question? I don't know.
Well, I'll use one of the lines that I love using. I don't even remember where I got it from, but I just know that for investors, if you do not understand an investment, use an expert or just stay away from it. Because if you do not know where the return is coming from, most likely you're the return. So this helps you avoid conmanship and losing money without understanding how you lost money.
Excellent.
Yes.
I don't think we can top that.
Do you have any questions for us?
You said you did a podcast on Bitcoin.
Yes.
In there. Yeah. I really want to listen to that. I look forward to going and watching it.
Yeah.
So you've said that the price is still going up. So should I invest? And
well,
should I buy Bitcoin?
I think I'll just bring back your advice to you again. So
return back to sender.
On one side,
you use experts and you're experts.
Yeah. So personally, I go with a personal. I would say never invest in anything you don't understand.
Yeah.
And if you want to invest in anything, first invest time in understanding it or basically learning. So, well, I would really want to tell you to invest. But I want you to study.
He's struggling.
So, okay, the bull case is that there is a very limited supply of Bitcoins,
Okay.
to 1 million.
Mm-hmm.
It's the best performing asset over the last 10 years globally,
Okay.
save for some small number of individual stocks. If you compare with asset classes, nothing beats Bitcoin. In terms of risk, it has one of the lowest risk compared to other assets where some manager could do some stuff and the stock goes down.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'd expect it to have more or higher risk.
There's no manager. So if you
Interesting.
send your Bitcoin to the wrong address, there's no customer service, there's no manager, it's all on you. But then that removes that kind of risk. So
Okay.
at the same
That's why
time,
investing time in that.
Yeah.
on the other hand, there's no jurisdiction risk that that China could ban Bitcoin. They have tried before. The US has tried banning, and there's no single point of weakness in the entire network. It's global liquidity. It's one of the most liquid assets in the world, and one of the fastest growing technologies in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I know AI is moving faster, but well,
When it's fast.
It is, but I tend to think AI is part of the blockchain. It's not single on its own.
yeah.
So even the more Bitcoin rises,
Yeah.
the more
Demand.
AI
Yeah.
gets demand. The more AI gets in demand,
Yeah.
it also supports development within the Bitcoin the blockchain ecosystem.
Well, the simple question is, if AI was, especially AI agents, if they were to use a currency, which currency would they go for?
Crypto.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they would most likely use a blockchain-based currency.
Not yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Okay.
so long and short, go and read it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had another one.
Yes.
The debate that has been going on, I don't know whether it's still there,
Yeah.
about Bitcoin. Oh, am I getting it wrong? Bitcoin being used as a reserve. Has there been something like that?
Yeah, there have been considerations in the US, particularly. You're asking if it should.
What are your thoughts? Do you think this is something that we could?
Yeah, I think so, because if people have been putting, I would say, jewelry, not even gold itself, jewelry, countries have been putting tanzanite and things like that. I think the characteristics of Bitcoin warrants a country to put it there, but the transparency it brings does not incentivize political actors to add it,
Yeah.
and therefore they would not want to. But if they were to do it, corruption would end on that first day.
Yeah. Well, from what I've seen from last year's US campaign, November, Trump wanted to include Bitcoin
Yeah.
in the US sovereign wealth fund.
Uh-huh.
He hasn't implemented that yet, so at this point, it's still a campaign promise. So there have been a number of steps in the legislation.
Yeah.
El Salvador is like the #1 country that literally the country holds Bitcoin, continues buying, and they have built quite a wealth fund. And in future, we might see some top bonds coming from that fund. Kingdom of Bhutan.
Done.
Yeah, they hold some significant amount of Bitcoin, up to like $1 billion. I don't know what Ethiopia is doing. Their main electricity producer, is the biggest miner of Bitcoin in Africa. With the excess energy being converted to Bitcoin mining, they made some good cash last year. So I don't know whether they are holding that as a reserve, or whether they are just selling in the market for profits.
Yeah. So in short, I support it, but the actors would not prefer it.
So on the question of the episode, we hosted a guy called CJ the Smart Guy. The episode is available on YouTube, FX Pesa, and Bullish Banter.
Okay.
But you can also find it on all other podcast platforms. If you search Bullish Banter, scroll the last 2-3 episodes, you'll find the one hosting CJ the Smart Guy.
Okay.
He has an interesting story on how he got there. He's a CPA as well. You know, the finance industry. I think that could illuminate more on the same.
Yeah.
Any other question for us?
No, I think that's an interesting area.
Yeah.
I not having ever been interested, but I think time. But now I'd want to invest more time learning and seeing how.
Yeah. I think the gospel of Rufus is nothing.
Rufus and Rosalind.
Definitely. I think this has been very informative. I hope you have enjoyed yourself. For our listeners, this was an in-depth sort of a conversation. And of course, she has mentioned a couple of links. You can go and check it out. Where can people find you?
Oh, I'm on LinkedIn and on X at Stella Swakei.
Yes. Yeah. As for myself, do not forget to like, share, subscribe, and of course, post in your questions. We'd love to address them in the next episodes, be it regarding this conversation or any that pops up in your mind regarding financial markets. This is not an investment advice podcast.
Yeah.
That time.
I'm not joking. But we hope you continue to learn. Of course, keep an eye on our socials. Something great is coming. And football is back. Do not forget to join Bullish Banter FPL. Until next time, I'm your host, Gola J4 Next.
Well, Rufus Kamal here. And as always, if you want to start your trading journey, make sure to check the links in the description below. Register for a trading account with FX Pesa. We will provide you with a lot of education, free education on our Zoom classes, of course, a live analysis on the Market Snapshot series on YouTube at 11 a.m. daily from Monday to Friday. Thank you.
Adios.
Bye.